Hello YouTube, today I'm going to be working on my dad's 1954 GMC pickup. I've showed you guys this in a couple of videos, maybe one, I don't remember. But today I'm going to be wiring up the dash again and fixing the issue I had with the temp sensor. And I also have an issue with the RPM gauge that I got doesn't really work. I called the company, but they're saying that they shipped them out. When they ship them out, that they all work fine. So that's what you get for buying cheap gauges off of eBay. But for the meantime, we'll rock without an RPM gauge. Besides, we don't need it. Just in case I haven't shown it before, here's my dad's truck. I think in the previous video, we might have not had the grill all assembled and the bumper, but she's a bit dusty right now. Oh, and also we've installed the windows already. I remembered I said it before, but just in case I didn't, we have a 4.3 and 4.8 LS engine in here off of a Chevy Tahoe, I believe, 2004 electronic pedal. I'm waiting on the cold air intake and the fan, because we installed the fan in the front to keep it kind of clean, but it didn't really work out. It's not cooling down the truck, so we're gonna be replacing that. And I don't know if you can notice that wire goes to the ground for the temp sensor. I had it connected to the block, got a ground off the block, but the gauge was reading off funky. Could be because of the coils, or I'm not sure, so I'm gonna run that ground straight to a battery ground, or to a clean ground that I know of. I'm gonna show you, it's a wiring mess still in here. Like I said, I don't remember if I showed you guys this, but it's a wiring nightmare. The PCM's in the back, and all the wires run from the front of the engine down the transmission all the way back. That's another PCM off of another vehicle. I was just trying it out because I thought that PCM was fried, but thankfully it wasn't. And there are the gauges, half assembled. But let's get them wired up so we can make it look a little bit cleaner inside. Another thing, before I get started, I don't know if I showed you guys the truck starting, so I'll get it started. Let the fuel pump prime twice. Here are the gauges that we installed on the bezel, on the dash bezel. They look pretty cool. I like these gauges. They're like the backlight changes, but it just sucks that they don't read as accurate and that the RPM doesn't work. But we're gonna be putting back the GMC logo that goes on the dash, so it shouldn't look that bad. And what I mean that it responds real slow, pay attention to the oil gauge. I don't think it was able to tell on the video because I can't hold everything up, but the gauges will respond pretty slow. Then the oil gauge says sometimes it's at 30, sometimes at startup it says it's at 25. When I know this truck is making at least 40 psi because I've checked it with my scanner. But like I said, you get what you pay for. I think we paid like $180 for these gauges. You know, expensive gauges, we probably would have spent $500 and up, $400 and up. But for the meantime, we'll rock these, and once they start failing, we'll switch to something better. And as you can see, I have it pretty much wired up already. I've done this off camera But I've had issue, like I said, with the temp gauge, that it would read wrong. When you would start it, it would start creeping up, and all of a sudden it would go to hot for no apparent reason when the truck wasn't hot, because I was monitoring through my scan tool. And I thought it was my wiring. Well, it kind of is. I thought it was a wiring that we bought aftermarket for the truck. It wasn't that. It was that I hooked up the ground to the block. Well, you can't see it, but to the block in the back of the head, and I guess it's giving it false reading, false ground, which would make this gauge go haywire. So I ran a ground from the battery all the way to the sensor as a test, and it worked perfectly fine. So again, reads a little bit off, but it's in the same ballpark, so we're not too worried. Because it reads wrong, I will be carrying around a scan tool, a small little portable scan tool, to just be checking up on the temp, making sure it doesn't overheat and the gauge isn't too far off the actual temp. So right now I'll be running that ground wire from the sensor probably down to the body, getting it grounded off to the body, or finding a better ground point on the transmission itself, because my ground from the battery is grounded off on one of the studs of the transmission. The first step I'm going to be doing is crimping one of these ground straps onto this wire. Then I'm going to measure the length of how much I need it and attach it to my sensor. Now that I have crimped it, I'm going to attach it to a stud that's on the transmission that you guys won't be able to see because I can't fit the camera back there. But I'm going to attach it, then add this 13mm nut and tighten it down. Then I'll run the spool all the way to the sensor and cut the wire to the length. And I'll have to do a ground strap for the gauges as well, because right now I'm using an alligator clip to the ground of the gauges. This Easy, I think it's by the company called Easy Wiring, is great because it comes with fuse boxes, all the wiring you need for the headlights, tail lights, ignition switch and everything. But it also sucks because it doesn't give you any grounds in the wiring harness itself, so you have to wire in your own grounds. It's not too hard, but it would be nice if they included that. Oh, you guys can sort of kind of see, this is one of the studs. There's another stud up here that I'll be bolting it onto. And from there, I'm gonna measure it out and put it in this wiring loom. This wiring loom goes all the way to the temperature sensor. Again, I'm sorry for all the wiring mess. This is an off and on project. And because since I have such a wiring mess here, I got the wire spool all tangled up, so I ended up cutting about what I need. Should hopefully be more than enough. I'll just cut the excess. So I'm gonna put it now through the wiring loom and then weld it up next to the sensor. I don't know if you guys will be able to see or not, but here's the ground wire. Here's the ground wire for the sensor. As you can see, I have lots left over, so all I'm gonna do is trim it, strip them, add this heat shrink in the between, weld it, and then heat up the heat shrink so it can be not watertight, so it can be sealed and not hopefully get corrosion. Right, you guys, everything's welded up, nicely wrapped in the loom, as you can see. So now on to the next step, which is adding a ground. Whew, I almost stepped on the welder. Now the next step that I have to do is, like I said, find a good ground for the ground wires for the gauges and mount the gauges back up. But first, put the GMC logo back right there so we won't have this big hole. After that's done, I'll be fixing the wiring of the fan It's wired correctly. I just put this temporarily just to see if that cooling fan we had installed in front of the grill was going to work, which it didn't. But this wiring is still going to be used for the other fan that we're going to install. So I'll be cutting this to the length I need, and soldering them together. Well, you guys, the gauges are installed. I'm going to cycle a key. As you can see, they go all the way up and down. As of right now, the only one that's not connected is a fuel gauge, because I have to put a level sensor in the tank, because the stock level sensor will not work because it reads different ohms. But there it is. All I need to do to finish this up, besides the fuel level, is to connect this wire, which this wire runs the backlight of the gauges. As you can hopefully see, I turn on the gauges right now. I'll get one of these many wires. I'll get, if I can find it, this thick red one, which I know is positive for the headlights. For the headlight switch, I may say. And once I hook it up, as you can see, oops, sorry. So you guys can hopefully see, gauges turn purple. You can kind of see it there. Off, on. When I have time, I'll show you guys a better representation of these backlights, or better view of these backlights. But for the most part, all that's wired. The steering wheel's wired. Hopefully you can see some of the wiring nightmare under here. It is electronic pedal or electronic throttle body. Is shorting this wire, which this wire was I just temporarily twisted it and added just some masking tape so it wouldn't arc on anything or ground off on anything. This is for the fan, as well as this one. So I'm just gonna shorten them up and run them to length, and for today I'll be basically done. Well, you guys, this was a short video, but I got the dash all wired up finally. Have the brake sensor, the brake switch, have the brake switch wired up also, thankfully. For the lights, for the PCM, I still need to run this wire. I just have to figure out where it's at, because I have leads here, but one's a speed sensor, tach, and then for check engine. I don't know what happened to the PCM brake switch one, so I have to figure out if I didn't add the pin or what. But like I said, for the most part, the gauge is ready. All the wiring that was hanging from the bottom, that was a big mess, is not there anymore. The temp sensor is working. All I have to do is basically chop these up or see if I need anything else. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to use one or two of the wirings here that's going to go to the dash for accessories and the radio. But besides all of that, I'm pretty sure they're all going to get cut. So I just have to see which I need, cut them, and then wrap them up on top for later future if I ever do need more power wires. Power wires with fuses, they'll be there, but she's coming along. Hopefully tomorrow, if I have time, I'll be taking off, cleaning up all of this, finding that lead, like I said, wiring it in, which I don't have to run a wire anymore because I have extras here that I pre-wired that go all the way to the front already. So once I find that wire, I'll clean up everything and put the bench seat back on, just so we can have a seat to move it around instead of a bucket, how we've been using all this time. But she's coming along. She's coming along little by little. That'll be most likely it for today. Thanks for watching the video. If you are interested in this project, please like and subscribe and turn that notification bell on That way, when I post new videos, which sometimes takes a month or a couple weeks, you'll be able to see them. Hopefully, the next video will be about this truck again, that or my dad's C10 installing the fuel tank.